Good afternoon. I want to talk to you today about a man whose name is familiar to everybody, to many, many millions of people in America as well as in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, as well as in Australia and New Zealand. To millions of people, some of them highly educated and some of them barely literate, who only know his name from the newspapers and the radio. He is the greatest living genius in the world of science. His name is Albert Einstein. Now, to many millions who know Einstein's name can be divided in, generally speaking, three categories. 99,900 who know his name out of every million have not the slightest idea why Einstein is the greatest living scientist or what he has done to deserve such a fame the world over and why his name is spoken with such awe and reverence. Of the remaining 100 of the million, 99 think that they know something about what Einstein is famous for, and there is a reflex action in their mind that goes with the word relativity, and more vaguely with the atom. And that's all they know. Then there's one in every million of civilized men who know exactly what the real meaning of Einstein's theory of relativity is and what Albert Einstein has done to upset all other theories about the universe which were held by the scientists since Newton, nearly 300 years ago. Now, but although nearly 300 years have passed since Sir Isaac Newton discovered the theory of gravitation, most people, whoever went to school, remember only the famous incident of Newton and the apple. As Lord Byron put it in the lines of his great poem Don Juan, when Newton saw an apple fall, he found, in the slight startle from his contemplation, a mode of proving that the earth turned round in a most natural rule called gravitation. Now, Einstein, unfortunately, didn't have an apple, and that's one reason why his theory is more difficult to understand. But when I said that one in every million can really claim to understand Einstein, I must add that this is a vast improvement, because when Albert Einstein came out with his theory 40 years ago, there were no more than half a dozen or a dozen scientists who understood him, and about half that number did not believe in his theory. Quite recently, only a few months ago, actually, Einstein revealed to a startled world a new theory which does not upset his earlier findings of special relativity, but amplifies it, widens it, and deepens his first theory to embrace the whole cosmos and everything in it. When some of America's greatest physicists said, rather self-consciously, that they do not yet understand Einstein's new theory, Albert Einstein declared before a group of scientific reporters in Princeton that no matter, it will take 40 years for his theory to be properly understood, as it took his first scientific discovery almost that long before it was really understood and made use of by the world. As you see, my friends, on the radio air, I nearly said in imitation of most speakers on the radio who talk to radio land. What sort of land has this radio air suddenly become? Surely one must not confuse land with air, especially when speaking about Einstein. And so you see, my friends, Einstein has time to wait. Albert Einstein was born on March 14, 1879, which makes him almost exactly 71 years old. The city in which he was born lies in the Swabian part of Bavaria, in Germany, and is called Ulm. His parents were middle-class Jews. His father, Hermann Einstein, had a very small electrotechnical factory, and that he operated with the help of his brother, who lived with the family. Albert's father attended to the commercial side of the enterprise, while his uncle acted as the technical director. A year later, another child was born to the Einsteins, a daughter. There were no more children. Business did not go so well at all. As a matter of fact, business did not go so well even when the family moved to Munich. If the truth must be told, I might as well tell you that Albert's father, Hermann, was not a good businessman at all. Now, the legend that all Jews are very clever businessmen is one of the silliest inventions, and thank God for that. Otherwise, Einstein might have become a good businessman, and God forbid. As a matter of fact, Einstein is the world's worst businessman that I know of. Einstein could have been easily a millionaire, through his own legitimate earnings and through the money that people offered him. Instead, he is one of the poorest scientists. That is, he has enough for his own needs, which are very little, and a little bit to help others, but not much. That is, not much that he can really do with the money, which he hasn't got, of course. When Hitler decided to take away the riches of Albert Einstein, he discovered that the whole bank account of this fabulous Jewish professor pardon me, consisted of barely 7,000 German marks, in addition to his library in a very modest little house in Berlin. And this money was still the remainder of the greatest sum that Einstein ever got. That is the $25,000 he received from the Nobel Prize in Sweden in 1922 in recognition for his discoveries in the realm of physics. And now I have some cheerful news for all fathers and mothers who are listening to me. If you have a boy who is not brilliant at school, who does not show any talent whatsoever, who is bad at reading and worse at mathematics, and you are in despair what will become of him, and you are in mortal terror that he may grow up to be a nitwit, a moron, a living Mortimer Snerd, I want to say to you, in the manner of the eminently cheerful Mr. Gabriel Heater, cheer up, friends, cheer up. Here is some good news for you. If you have a son who is so backward that you are ashamed to think that you have brought into the world, remember that you may be bringing up a second Albert Einstein. That is, provided you have Albert's father, the bad businessman, and you do as he did. And don't try to make your son into a good businessman. And let him behave exactly first like all other boys and later like all other men. Don't try to do that. Because Albert Einstein was one of the most ungifted boys you can imagine. He was rather dull. He could not read well even when he was 9 years old. Moreover, he could speak only with great difficulty at that age. He was extremely shy. He could not play any games, and he hated and refused ever to play soldiers. But above all, here is the best news for you. If Junior is not so very good at mathematics, remember that Albert Einstein was the very worst in his school in mathematics. So you have an even chance that your son might still become an Einstein and the greatest mathematician in the world. Let me tell you here a little story of this greatest of mathematicians, and you will see that Einstein is still a hopeless failure. What is really it's no wonder when it comes to simple arithmetics and has to do with money matters. I was once with Einstein on a train in England when he bought a packet of pipe tobacco, his only luxury in which he indulges, by the way. And he now became an honorary life member, let me tell you, of a pipe smokers club, because he believes that pipe smoking contributes, these are his words, contributes to somewhat calm and objective judgment in our human affairs. And so, when he bought the tobacco, I wanted to pay for it. But Einstein would not let me. The only present he accepted from me then was a box of matches, for which he kept on thanking me. Einstein fumbled in his pocket for some money. Now, the English monetary system is somewhat confusing to a foreigner. The price was 1 shilling and 2 pence. Tuppence. Now, a shilling is 12 pence, and 20 shillings make a pound sterling. Einstein was worried and confused. He kept repeating to himself, 1 shilling and 2 pence. That is 1 and 2. Yes, that is 12 and 2, rather. That means 12 and 2 is 14 pence. Now, let's see. Here is half a crown, which is 5 shillings. No, half a crown is 2 shillings. 2 shillings and 6 pence. That is 2, 12. 12 and 12 is 24, and 6 is 30. Then, the great Einstein absolutely resigned to this complicated problem, which was beyond him to solve. And he took out a handful of coins from his pocket, and stretching out a hand to the girl with the tobacco and cigarette tray, begged her to solve the difficult arithmetical problem and take whatever she thinks is right. Now, that was a scene with Einstein, the great mathematician. Young Einstein did not do so well at school even in later years. As a matter of fact, he liked neither the school nor the teachers. The rigid Prussian spirit in the gymnasium, the high school, was hateful to him. As he wrote later, the teachers in the elementary school appear to me like surgeons, and the gymnasium teachers like lieutenants. His real first love for science Einstein got from reading the Naturwissenschaftliche Volksbücher, popular books on natural science. Incidentally, I also read these books when I was very young, but it didn't help me to become an Einstein. And these books were written by the Jewish scientist Aaron Bernstein, to whom he was referred to by a Russian Jewish student who used to eat in Einstein's home every Thursday. But Einstein's great love was for music and poetry. Since Albert was 6 years old, his parents had insisted that he take violin lessons. At first, this was only another kind of compulsion added to the coercion at school, as he had the misfortune of having been taught by teachers for whom playing was nothing but a technical routine, and he was unable to enjoy it. But when he was 13 years old, he became acquainted with Mozart's sonatas and fell in love with their unique gracefulness. Einstein was never a virtuoso, but he mastered the violin to a very high degree, although he was always reluctant to play in public. A friend of mine, the celebrated English pianist Harriet Cohen, who accompanied Einstein in a Bach recital in the Berlin synagogue, told me that Einstein plays like a first-rate musician with a most delicate touch. Until this day, Einstein loves two things most for relaxation: to play the violin and to be on the river with his little boat. Still, he loves music most. In the elementary school, young Einstein was given a Catholic religious education, as his parents were not religious. Only when young Albert was 14 years old did he receive instruction in Jewish religion. Einstein was greatly stirred by the comments of the teachers of religion on the Proverbs of Solomon and the other parts of the Old Testament dealing with ethics. The experience made a permanent impression on him with a profound conviction of the great ethical value of the biblical tradition. Since then, Einstein became a conscious Jew and proud of his religious and cultural heritage, though he was never an Orthodox Jew. As soon as he finished the Polytechnic, that is the school in Switzerland, it was in Zurich, where his teacher was the great Russian Jewish mathematician Hermann Minkowski, Einstein had to look for a job. His father had by that time moved to Milan in Italy after his final business failure in Munich, in which he lost everything, and had to start afresh. And Einstein was lucky to get a poorly paid appointment in the patent office of the Swiss government, a job which was not so very easy to get for one who was not a true Swiss, and the fact that he was a Jew did not help either. It was at that time that Einstein married a young woman, Mileva Maric, who was born in Hungary and was of Greek Orthodox ancestry. He knew her from his student days, and they fell in love with each other. Einstein's work in the patent office was by no means uninteresting. His job was to make a preliminary examination of the reported inventions. It was at that time, at the turn of the century, that Einstein began to be dissatisfied with the theories that explained the mechanics of the universe. Einstein then began to work on his theory of relativity, and the universe that rested on the foundations of the Newtonian laws got a sudden jolt. At first, the scientific world, particularly in Germany, thought that Einstein, naturally because he was a Jew, was a charlatan or a madman, as Einstein's theories could not at that time be proved. Einstein had to wait until 1919, when all his predictions turned out to be exactly as he calculated them years before, during the total solar eclipse. On November the 7th, 1919, London was preparing to observe the first Armistice Day. The headlines in London Times were, "The glorious day, Armistice observation, all trains in the country stopped." On the same day, the Times also had another headline, "Revolution in science, Newtonian ideas overthrown." Now this is something very drastic for the times. The Royal Society and the Royal Astronomical Society had called a combined session for November 6th to make the formal announcement that the expedition that had been sent by these societies to Brazil and to West Africa to observe the total solar eclipse had from their observations reached the conclusion that the rays of light are reflected in the sun's gravitational field, and with just the amount predicted by Einstein's new theory of gravitation. This remarkable agreement between the creation of the human mind and the astronomical observations gave the session a wonderful and exciting atmosphere. We have an eyewitness account of this meeting by one of the greatest philosophers of our time, Alfred Lord Whitehead. As a mathematician, logician, philosopher, and a man endowed with a fine historical and religious sense, he was better suited to experience the uniqueness of this hour than most scientists. And that's what he writes. It was my good fortune, writes Whitehead, to be present at the meeting of the Royal Society when the Astronomer Royal for England announced that the photographic plates of the famous eclipse had verified the prediction of Einstein, that rays of light are bent as they pass in the neighborhood of the sun. The whole atmosphere of tense interest was exactly that of a Greek drama. We were, the chorus, commentating on the decree of destiny as disclosed in the development of a supreme incident. When Einstein shortly afterwards visited the United States, he was given a welcome as no foreigner was ever given in New York, and he was also given the freedom of the city of New York. For the first time was a scientist so famous. Maybe the world at large saw in Einstein not only a scientist of the highest genius, but also a truly great man, a great humanitarian, a great soul. Last time I visited Einstein was at his home in Princeton. He wrote a letter inviting me to come to him in the afternoon. When I arrived, I was told by his faithful secretary that Einstein is in bed and is expecting me. I was at first reluctant to go out. But then when I went out and knocked at his bedroom door, I apologized and asked him if perhaps if I disturbed him now, I would come some other time. No, not at all, said Einstein. I have a wonderful little illness, Einstein said, which saves me a lot of trouble. I can go to bed from time to time, and I am spared from going to meetings and to all sorts of committees. So my little illness puts me to bed for a few days, and I can get a rest and also do a bit of work. Einstein's head was resting on his pillows. His head is the most wonderful thing to behold. If you look at his head with the white soft long hair, with his large brown smiling eyes, with his almost translucent delicate skin, with the deep lines around his mouth and his magnificent forehead, you become convinced of the truth of the words in the Bible, that God created man in his own image. I have seen no more awe-inspiring and at the same time more lovable face in my life. We spoke about many things, some serious and some not so serious. And here I want to tell you that the most unforgettable thing about Einstein is his laughter. Never have I heard such wonderful laughter in a man. Of course, children can really laugh with all their little bodies, with all their being, with all their soul, and Einstein's laughter is like that. We spoke then about the conditions of man and about religion. We spoke about the grim outlook of the political situation. It seems such a long time, and it is barely 10 years since Einstein wrote that famous letter to President Roosevelt, that it is possible to produce an atomic bomb which would revolutionize warfare, and that if America will not immediately set up a project to produce this bomb, Hitler's scientists will have time to produce their atomic energy bomb. And America, together with the whole free world, will be vanquished by the Nazi tyranny. It was probably the most serious step that Einstein had to take and inflict himself and go to President Roosevelt and tell him face to face. And it was thanks to Einstein's advice, because Roosevelt could not afford not to listen to Einstein. Roosevelt set the Atomic Energy Commission in motion after being convinced by Albert Einstein of the necessity, of the absolute dire need that America must have. and that time is of the greatest essence. Einstein was one of the first to advocate the International Atomic Commission and control. But Albert Einstein, though he told me in a melancholy moment that it is horrible to think, these were his words, that our world might really be blown up and there will be nobody left to listen to Mozart's music. Yes, these were Einstein's words. You see, he's such a lover of music. And he's such a lover of the world. It is nevertheless, when you think of him, it is nevertheless all the time you feel in Einstein the incorrigible optimist. He believes in the victory of reason. Reason, the highest emanation of God in man, that is reason. Reason over madness. The human spirit will triumph. But men of goodwill must now awaken to the greatest crisis of man's history. The very destiny of the human species, nay, his very continuation on this planet is at stake now. That is also why, as a Jew, Einstein is not a narrow-minded nationalist, although he was one of the warmest supporters of the Jewish state from his early youth, but at the same time, he's also a true internationalist. He talks about Judaism in the following words. The essence of the Jewish concept of life seems to me to be the affirmation of life for all creatures. For the life of the individual has meaning only in the service enhancing and ennobling the life of every living thing. Life is holy. That is, it is the highest work on which all other values depend. The sanctification of life, which transcends the individual, brings with it reverence for the spiritual, a peculiarly characteristic trait of the Jewish tradition. Now, these words are also true of Albert Einstein's personal life. It is interesting that at the headquarters of the Society of Friends, the Quakers of London, there hang 3 portraits of Mahatma Ghandi, of Albert Schweitzer, and Albert Einstein. 3 great religious spirits who glorify the name of man created in God's image for the service of mankind. All 3 apostles of love, love for humanity and peace. Good afternoon.